He walked in alone, no armor, no weapons, just a plastic bag of snacks, and every species in the galaxy thought it was a joke. Until he looked up, and the cameras caught the scar behind his eye. The gate hissed open with a low hum that echoed across the colossal galactic arena, and every monitor, every drone cam, every alien viewer in orbit or system-wide saw the same thing at the same time. A single human man stepped into the light. No entourage. No war paint. No gleaming armor etched with species crests. Just a worn jacket, combat boots scuffed by red dust, and a convenience store bag swinging loosely from one hand. The bag read, "Thank you," in faded Earth script. Somewhere in the arena, a commentator gasped with laughter. Billions followed suit. The galactic feed cut to a dozen panels at once, each showing the stunned or mocking faces of opposing fighters, a quadruped mech jockey with plasma-forged tusks, a high-born tactician with 3 heads and 7 medals, a shadow assassin literally shrouded in void mist. And then there was Earth's champion, human, male, breathing normally, utterly unbothered. His name tag blinked in red across the arena's info feed, entry confirmed, Griff. Most of the crowd hadn't even known Earth had signed up. Technically, Earth didn't. The invitation was sent to all member systems, but Earth's response was a blank file, interpreted as a silent refusal or accidental delete. Yet here he was. And now they had to honor the bracket rules. 1 entry per world, and he was it. No substitutions. No disqualifications. Security AI scanned him with 12 different sensors. No neural implants. No psionics. No illegal weapon signatures. His vitals read as calm. Too calm. One drone zoomed in on his face, where he blinked up at the arena dome's glow, squinting like it annoyed him, then shook a piece of gum into his mouth and began to chew. A 6-armed gladiator from Eox Prime burst out laughing so hard he dropped his sword. In the locker corridors behind the gates, the other competitors had gathered to see who Earth had sent. Most hadn't expected anything at all. A few had placed bets, jokes, really, on Earth sending a preacher, a cow, or a peace delegation. Instead, they saw a man who looked like he just walked out of a motel room and onto a galactic stage. One champion, Clivor the Bone Splitter, grinned and clapped his claws together. "I'll take first match," Clivor said to the arena director. "I like my kills quick and pitiful." The director, a tall thin-boned species called a Velener, only nodded. "Per rules, random draw must be honored. But I'll see what I can do." They needn't have bothered. Griff was listed dead last on the bracket. The assumption was he wouldn't make it past round 1. Letting Clivor fight him early would have been a mercy, but the system was clear. And Griff? He sat down on a bench in the center holding pen, pulled a drink out of his plastic bag, and cracked it open without looking at anyone. Viewers across hundreds of systems tuned in not for the fight, but the execution. Everyone loved a good massacre, especially when the underdog didn't realize they were the underdog. Commentators started layering on jokes. "Look at this guy, folks. He brought electrolytes. Someone tell him he won't need rehydration after vaporization. What's in that bag? Strategy snacks? Maybe he's one of Earth's clerics. Is he gonna pray the other guys to death?" But Griff just drank, leaned back, and closed his eyes like he was trying to nap through a flight delay. Then something unexpected happened. A small maintenance bot rolled past him, one of the older arena floor units, barely ankle-high, carrying cable coils and armor polish. Its wheel locked. It jerked. Then sparked. Griff looked at it once and tapped its side with his boot. The machine buzzed twice and resumed moving. It was small. Pointless. Unscripted. But someone watching from a remote feed, the owner of a major weapons firm, leaned closer to the screen. Then he blinked and called his assistant. "Pause it. Zoom. Back 2 seconds. Did you see his reflexes?" No hesitation. The assistant frowned. "Sir, it's a floor bot. They do that sometimes." "Not like that. Look at how fast he read the jam and recalibrated pressure. That wasn't luck." But the show went on. Back in the ready hall, the fighters lined up. The opening matches were brutal, explosive, and stunning. Augmented combatants performed high-speed feats that made lower gravities shake. A molten whip cut a living suit in half. A hive tactician used pheromone manipulation to cause their opponent to faint mid-strike. It was glorious, as usual. And through it all, Griff didn't move. Didn't prep. Didn't stretch. Just waited. When it was his turn to step into the match tunnel, lights flared. A drumbeat thundered through the arena, synthetic and primitive all at once. A hologram of his opponent, Vix Drahl, a 7-foot armored combatant from Ithka Prime, hovered above the gate. Vix was announced with a storm of honorifics. Warborn. Flayer of Kings. Crusher of the Scarlet Barge. And Griff? No title. Just a name. He walked into the tunnel. No armor upgrade. No weapon requisition. Nothing but the clothes on his back and the bag still swinging from his hand. A camera caught him whispering something under his breath. They better have decent beer up there. And then he stepped into the light. Gasps. Laughter. A few cheers, mostly sarcastic. But somewhere deep in the audience, a hooded figure leaned forward and narrowed their eyes. They weren't laughing. They saw the scar behind Griff's right ear. Surgical. Hidden under a fold of skin. Not cosmetic. Not random. It matched a file that had been sealed by Earth's intelligence agency 16 years ago. The figure stood and left quietly. Inside the arena, Griff faced his opponent, Vix, who raised his fists and snarled through a speaker modulator. Any last words, Earthman? Griff looked up at the crowd, still chewing. Then smiled. Yeah. Don't blink. The silence that followed Griff's final words lasted longer than any announcer expected. For the first time in the Galactic Arena's violent, glittering history, an opening match began not with a trumpet blast or war cry, but with uncertainty. Vix Drahl, the armored warrior bred for conquest, didn't charge immediately. He was waiting for something. Maybe a trick. Maybe a secret weapon. But Griff didn't reach for anything. He didn't take a stance. He didn't even drop the snack bag he was still holding. He just tilted his head, like he was trying to remember something. Then he rolled his shoulders once, like someone about to fix a leaky faucet. Vix moved first. Not a full charge. A test. He lunged forward and swung one massive fist in a heavy arc, the kind meant to knock skulls clean from shoulders. It whistled through the air. Griff ducked slightly, just a bend of the knees, and the punch missed by inches. He didn't counter. He didn't retaliate. He just looked at Vix's exposed side, glanced at the crowd, and stepped away like he was avoiding a puddle. The crowd didn't know how to react. They were used to fireworks, not footwork. Vix snarled and came in again, this time with both fists, moving faster now, sensing mockery. He lashed out with a kick that sent shockwaves through the floor. Griff leaned back, barely, and the strike passed in front of his chest. He swatted the air near Vix's leg like he was shooing away a fly. The crowd was starting to murmur. Someone in the control booth zoomed in on Griff's face, expecting a grin. Instead, they caught something else. His eyes weren't wide or wild. They were narrowed. Calculating. Measuring. Watching every muscle twitch in Vix's body before the movement even began. On the third rush, Vix shouted a guttural word in his native tongue and activated a plasma blade from his wrist. The crowd roared, hungry for escalation. The blade hissed to life, glowing bright and trembling at its edges. Griff finally moved with purpose. He flicked the plastic bag off his hand and let it drop to the floor. The crowd leaned in. For a second, they thought he was going to reach into his jacket, maybe reveal a hidden weapon, maybe finally show some real firepower. But he didn't. He waited for the exact moment Vix committed to a downward strike, stepped slightly to the right, and used the warrior's own momentum to guide the blow straight into the floor. Sparks erupted. Stone cracked. Vix was off balance. Griff grabbed his arm, not with aggression, but with ease, and twisted it just enough to dislocate the shoulder with a sharp, clean snap. The scream echoed. The crowd didn't react right away. It had been too fast. Too quiet. They had to wait for the slow-motion replay to even understand what they'd seen. Vic stumbled back, clutching his arm. The blade fizzled out. Blood trickled from under his armor. Griff stood still, one hand in his pocket, as the arena's match AI analyzed the rules of engagement. A medical drone flew in. Vix fell to one knee. The drone beeped. Fight over. Earth wins. The feed cut to a dozen shocked commentators. Some stammered. Some claimed it was a fluke. Others accused Griff of using illegal neural targeting. A few declared him a genius. One very angry weapons manufacturer slammed his drink into the console and stormed out. A betting market collapsed in real time as trillions of credits shifted away from Earth's elimination brackets. The odds flipped within minutes. Griff's image now sat near the top of the viewership board. Backstage, several champions reviewed the footage. They rewound the moment where Griff moved. Frame by frame, they studied his timing, the lack of wasted energy, the angle of the dislocation. He hadn't just dodged. He had known. Somehow, he had read Vix's entire attack pattern before it even began. Clivor the Bone Splitter stared at the monitor and narrowed his 6 eyes. He didn't laugh this time. He was trained, he said quietly. Not just trained. Forged. One of the hive tacticians clicked her mandibles. No one reads movement like that without a predictor core. But he's scanned clean. He's human, said another. They don't use core implants. Exactly, Clivor muttered. So what's in his head? Elsewhere, in a dimly lit control chamber above the arena's highest deck, a private data stream blinked to life. The hooded figure from earlier sat at the console, rerunning the match footage. When Griff flicked the bag aside, they paused. Zoomed. Watched it fall. They saw what no one else had seen. The bag wasn't empty. There was a slight bulge inside. Not a weapon. Not armor. Something else. Something that vibrated slightly on impact with the floor. The figure keyed in a silent code, and 3 untraceable probes were launched into the locker rooms below. Back in the arena, Griff walked back to the holding pen like nothing had happened. He sat down. Pulled out another drink from inside his jacket. Cracked it open. No celebration. No nod to the crowd. Just a sip and a sigh. The maintenance bot from earlier rolled up to him again. This time it offered a replacement towel. He took it, wiped his neck, and tossed it back with perfect aim into a nearby bin without looking. The towel landed neatly, without a sound. A young arena intern, a species with soft skin and bright eyes, walked past and blurted, "Sir, good fight." Griff looked at him for a moment, then smiled gently. "That wasn't the fight." The intern blinked. "What?" "That was the setup." He said nothing else. The intern ran off and told 3 other staffers. Soon, whispers spread that the human had plans. That he wasn't just lucky. That he might be playing a longer game. Rumors exploded. Conspiracy forums lit up. One alien network declared that Earth had secretly created the perfect fighter. Another theorized that Griff wasn't human at all, but a decoy unit sent to test arena protocols. Meanwhile, Griff closed his eyes and leaned back against the wall. On the inside of his jacket, behind the stitch tag, a tiny calm light blinked once. Then again. He didn't respond. Not yet. Not until the right match. Because the real reason he was here had nothing to do with trophies. It didn't take long for Griff to become a galactic meme. Within hours of his quiet victory over Vic Strahl, feeds across dozens of systems were flooded with clips, rewinds, and remixes. One popular edit zoomed in on his blank expression mid-fight and overlaid the words, "Still not impressed." Another featured a slow-motion clip of him sipping his drink post-match, set to triumphant music. On a planet 3 systems away, a vendor started selling shirts with his face and the phrase, "Earth's Champion, sponsored by Snacks." Yet, even as the audience roared with laughter or amazement, the fighters in the brackets below were not laughing. They watched the replays. They watched the slow, calculating movements. The economy of motion. The utter control. This wasn't a lucky civilian. This was something else. In the following match, the arena hosts scheduled a special event. 3 lower-tier champions, all genetically enhanced for speed and endurance, would face Griff together. It was meant to entertain the crowd and boost ratings. No one had ever defeated 3 in a single round. The hosts expected Griff to put up a fight, maybe take one down, and then fall in a dramatic finish that would secure high engagement and betting interest for the next round. They even adjusted the lighting to be more cinematic and pumped music through the ground floor tiles for effect. Griff showed up a few seconds before match start, rubbing his eyes like he'd just woken up from a nap. His boots were still dusty. No new gear. No visible upgrades. He gave the crowd a small wave. One of the 3 opponents, a 4-armed creature with double-blade gauntlets, snarled and beat its chest. The second, a floating orb of translucent muscle and tendrils, emitted a shrieking battle cry. The third stood calmly, clearly the tactician of the group. She tapped her heel twice, signaling a countdown. Griff stood in the center of the arena and looked at each one like he was deciding which dish to eat first. He didn't move. The bell rang. The crowd exploded in cheers. All 3 charged. The first to reach him was the orb. It launched a high-speed tendril meant to grab and crush. Griff ducked, let it pass over his head, then stepped aside just enough to let it tangle with one of the other fighter's legs. In the same motion, he grabbed the 4-armed one's nearest wrist and twisted it around, using its own blade to deflect a follow-up strike. Sparks flew. Then he stepped back. No punches. No kicks. He just used their aggression against each other, like a man calmly watching 3 angry cats tied at the tail. The crowd grew quiet. A different kind of silence this time. Not mockery. Not confusion. Curiosity. Interest. The slow realization that something was happening they didn't fully understand. Griff allowed the 3 to reset their positions. They circled him this time, wary now. The female tactician tried to bait him into moving by faking a left jab. He didn't react. The 4-armed one bellowed and leapt from above. Griff sidestepped, letting the fighter crash into the floor and roll awkwardly. The tendril orb struck again. This time Griff reached into his jacket, pulled out a round metal cap from his drink bottle, and flicked it across the air. It struck the orb's eye slit just as it wound up for a second strike. The orb spasmed, shrieked, and collapsed. 2 down. The tactician lunged in for a kill shot, seeing his back turned. Griff spun low, grabbed her foot mid-lunge, and swept her off balance. She landed hard and tried to rise, but his boot was already pressing lightly on her chest, not enough to crush, just enough to end the match. She looked up at him, stunned. He spoke then, only to her. One sentence. "You're thinking too hard." Match over. The arena's sound system declared the results, but the crowd hardly heard it. They were standing, cheering, screaming. Dozens of alien races, each with their own styles of combat and pride in their champions, now fixated on the lone Earthman who hadn't even broken a sweat. Back in the holding chambers, commentators scrambled to adjust their narratives. One analyst declared him a genius-level combat adapter. Another speculated Earth had developed a secret temporal delay training module. The conspiracy channels reignited. Some believed Griff was a rogue AI wearing human skin. Others said he was from an alternate timeline. A betting network froze its Earth champion odds entirely, citing algorithmic volatility. In private rooms, multiple arena sponsors held emergency meetings. In the shadows of the upper command balcony, the hooded figure watching it all was no longer passive. Their gloved fingers moved across an interface, unlocking deep intelligence files. They bypassed 23 layers of encryption and accessed Earth's Black-class military archives. Code name, Sandman? Confirmed. The mission logs were short, heavily redacted, but one stood out. Operation Silence Gate. No surviving team. Only one body never recovered. Griff. The hooded figure didn't speak. They simply sent one message to an untraceable receiver. He's here. Somewhere far from the arena, on a small barren moon used as a warlord retreat, a high-ranking slaver received the message and went pale. He remembered that name. Sandman? The last time it had surfaced, 2 of his ships vanished mid-transport. Entire crews gone. No distress signals. Just floating hulls. He had written it off as ghost rumors. Now he knew better. Earth hadn't sent a soldier to win. They had sent something worse. A survivor. Back in the arena, Griff sat alone again. The locker room was noisier now, the other champions keeping their distance, watching from corners. A few offered forced nods of respect. Others stared with suspicion. Griff ignored them all. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a worn photo. 3 people. A squad. Him, a woman with a braided side cut, and a heavy-set man with a cigar in his mouth. The kind of photo someone would keep in a wallet for too many years. He stared at it for a long moment, then folded it and tucked it back inside. The light from a nearby console flickered. His name blinked on the board again. This time, there was no laughter. No sarcasm. No jokes. Just one question circulating everywhere. Who the hell is this man? Griff leaned back. Closed his eyes. And somewhere in the dark above, high-ranking players across the galaxy began to panic. Because Earth's champion wasn't just winning. He was changing the game. And no one knew what would happen next. The next match wasn't supposed to happen for another 2 days, but Arena Command moved it up without warning. No explanation was given to the media. No interviews were allowed. Griff didn't ask. When the new assignment was posted on the locker room feed, most of the other fighters gathered silently around the display. The name lit up in glowing red text. Opponent, Jin Veros, Category 8 Synthetic War Beast. The announcement sent ripples through the lower halls. Jin Veros wasn't just a competitor. It was a walking siege unit, bred for destruction, armored with self-healing alas and outfitted with adaptive AI. It had ended entire brackets on its own. Spectators came not to see it fight, but to witness its aftermath. The kind of aftermath that usually required cleanup teams. Griff was already walking toward the tunnel before the match bell rang. One of the guards tried to stop him to run a last-minute scan, but he just lifted his hand slightly, and the guard froze. Not from fear. From recognition. The guard didn't say a word. He let Griff pass, eyes fixed on something only he understood. A few meters behind him, the same maintenance spot from before trailed along the wall, seemingly aimless. The arena lights darkened as the crowd prepared. Jin Veros was introduced with thunderous sound and an entire visual montage. Explosions, screams, a list of species it had eliminated. It stood 3 meters tall and resembled a cross between a hydraulic centaur and a tank. Its movements were smooth, its eyes red and tracking. Its metallic limbs crackled with energy fields. It emitted no sound, only a low vibration that made the air around it pulse. Then came Griff. No montage. No music. He walked out as if he'd just finished grocery shopping. Same jacket. Same boots. He stopped just outside the line of entry and looked up at the crowd. The cheers had changed. Less mockery now. More hesitation. Somewhere in the distance, a fan held up a crude sign with Griff's name written in mismatched alien glyphs. He didn't see it. Or maybe he just didn't react. The announcer tried to fill the silence with flair, but the feed glitched. The screen flickered once, then again. The countdown began. Jin Veros surged forward like a coiled spring released from a cannon. The floor beneath it cracked. The entire arena shook. The crowd leaned in, anticipating carnage. Then the ground exploded. Not from Jin Veros. From beneath Griff. In a flash of blue light, half the arena floor caved in and a magnetic pulse went off in the substructure. The match hadn't started. It wasn't an accident. It was a kill attempt. Metal shards erupted through the floor. Steel girders bent upward. A storm of debris and sparks blinded the front row watchers. Emergency barriers activated. For 6 terrifying seconds, the arena filled with static and silence. Then the feeds reconnected. Jin Veros was on its side, one leg twitching. Its main targeting lens had cracked. Something was sparking from its chest core. A massive support beam had collapsed directly onto its spine. Griff stood 10 feet away, one hand bleeding from the forearm, jacket torn. Not from the collapse. From pulling himself out of it. The crowd gasped. Commentators shouted over each other. The match AI froze, unable to calculate a rule breach that didn't make sense. Arena security flooded the command channel. Match suspended. Medical drones flew out. One aimed toward Griff, but he waved it off and walked out of the arena before the lights could reset. Back in the underground control corridors, the hooded figure slammed a fist into the console. The detonation had been set for perfect timing. Calculated down to the microsecond. The arena's emergency failsafes were meant to be overridden by a backdoor buried under years of code. The sabotage was flawless. And Griff had walked away from it. They switched feeds. The plastic bag from the first match. Still on the locker room floor. They paused the frame again. Enhanced the footage. There, nested just under the snack packaging, was the transmitter. Micropulse. Old Earth tech. Looked like garbage. Functioned like gold. Griff had known about the sabotage before the match began. The figure activated a secondary line and spoke to someone through a static-heavy channel. The voice on the other end was distorted. "He's not here for the title. No. He's here to flush us out. How much time do we have?" "None." He just sent the message. In the maintenance tunnels, a small black drone flickered to life. It wasn't arena tech. It wasn't registered. It moved silently along the pipes until it reached a chamber with 2 unconscious engineers. It hovered for a moment, scanned the wall, and then activated a beacon. Back in his locker room, Griff sat alone again, patching his arm with a field wrap he pulled from a pouch inside his boot. He didn't flinch as the gauze sealed over the wound. He didn't look around. He just reached into the torn lining of his jacket and pressed a small button behind the left shoulder. The faintest green light blinked once. Then it went dark. Across the arena, 6 power relays flickered. A generator unit surged for no reason. Security feeds in 5 lower halls glitched for exactly 6 seconds. And in a hidden compartment built beneath the VIP box, a long-dormant relay system reconnected to Earth's private relay grid. Arena Command tried to issue a statement calling the floor collapse a structural failure. But footage had already leaked. The sabotage was obvious. Commentators scrambled to save face. One said it was an experimental obstacle match. Another claimed it was a simulation test that accidentally got triggered. Viewers weren't convinced. Messages flooded the networks. Who tried to kill Earth's champion? Why? And why wasn't he even surprised? In a secluded room with reinforced glass, Jin Veros lay inactive. Engineers whispered to each other about what Griff might have done. But none of them saw him touch anything. None of them knew how that support beam had landed so precisely. Later that evening, Griff walked into the training ring, alone. The lights were off. The room was supposed to be closed. But someone had left the system online. A champion waited inside. Not a scheduled fight. Not a public event. Just a figure in standard combat gear, leaning against a wall. "You don't sleep, do you?" Griff shrugged. "Depends who's asking." The champion stepped into the light. It was Zix. Undefeated. Telepathic. Regarded as one of the most dangerous minds in the arena. He said nothing for a long time. Then finally he spoke. "They want you dead. I noticed. You know what happens if you keep winning." Griff cracked his neck. "That's the plan." Zix nodded once. He didn't smile. He didn't threaten. He just stepped aside. "When the arena names its final matchup, make sure it's me." Griff paused by the door. "You sure?" Zix looked down at his hands. "No. But I want to see how this ends." And with that, Griff disappeared into the dark, leaving behind only one thought in Zix's mind. He's not a champion. He's a message. The final match was scheduled without fanfare. No countdown, no trailer, no propaganda from the arena sponsors. No gladiatorial flair or honor-chanting announcers. Just a silent update to the digital match boards, one that sent a jolt across the galaxy. Earth versus CX. The undefeated telepath against the man who wouldn't die. Betting systems went into chaos. Odds were taken offline entirely. The crowd arrived in silence this time, packed into the stands but whispering, not cheering. Even the loudest alien commentators could feel the shift. Something was wrong. Not just about the fight, but about what the arena had become since Griff showed up. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This felt like the edge of something sharp and invisible, moving closer by the second. Griff walked out first. No music again. No fanfare. No jacket this time either. Just a simple, tight black shirt, revealing arms mapped with faint scars, the kind earned over years of unseen war. His steps were steady. He didn't look at the crowd. He didn't look at the cameras. He just walked to the center of the arena floor and stopped. He exhaled once and looked up. ZX emerged from the opposite gate. He was calm, armored lightly in reflective plates tuned to his neurofields. His 8 fingers were laced in front of him, his black eyes unreadable. He said nothing. They didn't need to speak. There had already been a conversation. Now there was only action. The arena systems triggered the start. The match began. ZX struck first, not physically, but mentally. His telepathic pulses weren't gentle probes. They were full-force illusions layered with memory triggers, designed to collapse the target's perception. A lesser mind would have folded in seconds. But Griff didn't stumble. He didn't even blink. He stood in place, then took a single step forward. ZX increased the pressure. Flashes of sound, of battlefields, of screams from Earth's distant past filled the space between them. Not just sights and sounds, but emotions. Regret. Guilt. Isolation. Images of Griff's fallen squad. The woman with the braid. The man with the cigar. Their last moments, played on repeat. Even the audience began to feel the edges of it. A few covered their ears without knowing why. In the control room, the match AI tried to reduce signal strength, but ZX's mind was too powerful. The broadcast began to distort. Griff took another step. ZX blinked. His rhythm shifted. This wasn't possible. No one had ever walked through his projections like this. Griff wasn't ignoring them. He was absorbing them. Internalizing them without flinching. The illusions grew darker. Louder. A storm of mental attacks slammed into Griff's skull. And still, he walked. At 5 meters, ZX switched tactics. He reached into the kinetic energy of the space between them and hurled a blast of raw force. It hit Griff square in the chest and knocked him back 3 steps. The crowd gasped. But Griff didn't fall. He exhaled, rolled his shoulder once, and said something almost no one could hear. "That all you got?" ZX bared his teeth. His hands lifted. The air rippled. Every remaining champion still watching from the shadows felt it. He was going all in now. A final psychic wave, sharpened to a surgical point, launched directly at Griff's frontal cortex. If it landed, it wouldn't just stun. It would erase. Thoughts, memories, everything. It was a weapon of mercy and destruction combined. ZX had never used it before. Griff stopped moving. For a moment, it looked like he had finally frozen. The wave struck. But then something strange happened. The lights in the arena dimmed. Not theatrically, not planned. Power levels dropped across 6 sections of the stadium. Broadcast feeds glitched. Then went black. One by one. An internal power relay triggered a bypass that no one had authorized. Griff looked up, smiled once, not at ZX, not at the crowd, but at the ceiling. Somewhere far above, in orbit, an Earth satellite that had been dormant for years reactivated. Its transmission was silent, but its effect wasn't. Across the galaxy, military intelligence networks went dark. Signal beacons belonging to criminal cartels fizzled into static. A command line buried inside arena infrastructure came alive and uploaded a payload into the private systems of 5 galactic warlords who had funded the entire championship. ZX felt it first. He staggered backward, hands shaking. His psychic connection to the external field cut off suddenly. Not because of Griff. Because of something else. A pulse. A firewall. Mental space collapsing around him. All the illusions, the projections, the power, gone. Cut at the source. Griff moved then. Calmly. Quickly. He crossed the floor in 5 measured steps, stepped inside ZX's guard, and didn't punch. He simply reached out and placed a single hand over ZX's chest. Don't fight it. ZX looked into his eyes. What are you? Griff didn't answer. The arena declared the match over. Earth victor. But there was no cheering. Only silence. Because every screen lit up at once, not with celebration, but with data. Names. Numbers. Corruption logs. Financial trails that led back to planetary regimes. Arena fixers. Assassination contracts. Slave trades disguised as transport deals. The arena had been a distraction. A front. And Griff hadn't come to fight. He had come to expose it. In the upper box, the hooded figure was gone. So were half the sponsors. Some had already fled orbit. Others had shut down their networks and gone dark. But it was too late. The feeds were global now. Griff's face, his voice, and every file he had embedded in the system was out in the open. He didn't stay to watch the reaction. He left the arena through a side corridor. No guards tried to stop him. Some even stepped aside as he passed. The corridor led to the outer dock platform where a transport ship waited. No markings. No weapons. Just a sleek design built for silent departure. A familiar maintenance spot waited at the ramp. He gave it a pat on the head. Thanks for the help. The bot chirped once and powered down. Griff stepped aboard the ship. As the doors closed, he took one final look back at the arena dome. Not in anger. Not in pride. Just quiet acknowledgement. Then he turned and disappeared into the cabin. Back in the arena, ZX sat alone in the middle of the floor, still breathing hard. A technician tried to approach him with a medical kit. ZX waved him off. He's gone, the technician said. No. He'll be back. Not for the arena. Not for the fights. But for whatever comes next. The screen above flickered one last time. Not a match result. Not a title card. Just a simple message in Galactic Common. Earth's champion walked in alone. He left the whole system exposed.